Meditation is very simple and very natural. It's as simple and natural as coming home. I was watching in the early spring the Canada geese returning home. The geese are following a natural homing instinct. It's part of their goosey nature that they know when to go home and the direction to follow. As human beings, we have a rather strong, distorting ego that gets in the way of this natural homing instinct. And in meditation, we move beyond the ego and we get back into touch with that homing instinct to God, to our own true self. And that's why meditation is simple and natural. It's simply the way to get back into touch with our own true nature. And that homing instinct in us we call the spirit. The most important thing to remember about meditation is that it is we who are complicated when we begin, and that meditation, which is simple, simplifies us.
A Benedictine monk, Father John Main, rediscovered a simple discipline of meditation within the Christian contemplative tradition. Born in 1926 in London into an Irish Catholic family, John Main's journey into the monastic life led him through work as a journalist, a diplomat, and a professor of law. It was when he was a diplomat in Malaysia that his spiritual life was opened to new depths by his meeting with an Indian monk, Swami Satyananda, who taught him a way of meditation beyond thought and imagination, in silence and stillness, by the repetition of a sacred word or mantra. By finding this same method of meditation in his own tradition, John Main's experience and teaching has led to a worldwide community of Christian meditators.
We've been so powerfully moved by the teaching of Father John Main, when he reminded us of the indwelling presence of the Holy Spirit, that each of us is created in the image of God, that the Spirit of the risen Christ lives within us. And that meditation is the way in which we come to a closer relationship with this indwelling presence of the Lord. And by being led into His presence through the daily discipline of meditation, we are then able to expand our love. And I think the expansion of our love is what I think the gospel message is all about.
It's a sort of dual move, a deeper and more accepting experience of myself as an individual and as a unique individual. But at the same time as that movement, which you might call inwards, there's an experience or a movement of feeling much more in touch with the world around me and everybody else involved in that.
Because for me, meditation is the discipline of silence. It is the discipline of total surrender.
I think the ideal motivation is to meet God, to be with God, to find what the essence is of what is around you and yourself. And I think meditation is not the only way, certainly, but it's definitely the simplest way to do it. Difficult, but simple.
Still meditating in this way, John Main became a Benedictine monk here at Ealing Abbey in London. But he was soon advised to give up the way of meditation he'd been following because it wasn't in the Christian tradition. And so he returned to the kind of mental discursive prayer, which was in fact the only kind of prayer taught in seminaries and even monastic novitiates at that time. It was the beginning of a spiritual desert, he said later. He went to America, became headmaster of a Benedictine school, and became very busy. But at the same time, he started a study of the early Christian monks, the Desert Fathers, and their teaching on prayer. They were recorded in the conferences of John Cassian, who became a great influence on St. Benedict and the whole Christian contemplative tradition. In the 10th conference of Cassian, he describes how to deal with the restless, distracted, wandering mind, the monkey mind. And he advised this way, to take a short verse of scripture and to repeat it continually in the mind and heart during the time of meditation. John Main started to meditate again, now conscious of the Christian tradition behind the mantra. He very soon realized that this was a way of prayer not only for monks, but for lay people of all kinds. When he returned to England, to his monastery, he started a small lay community at this house on the monastery grounds. It was here that I joined him. And here he began to teach meditation to whoever came. At first to the lay community, but very shortly people from all over London began to come and ask to be taught to meditate in this way. And it was here that the first meditation groups began to form.
That was the very first time I'd ever meditated. And I went into the room with all the other people and found it extremely difficult to concentrate for the period of time that he kept us there silent. But I managed it. I forgot the mantra halfway through, but I believe that's a common occurrence. After a month of meditation, my normal prayer life was completely turned upside down. And I was slightly disturbed by this and wanted to talk to him and tell him what my reaction had been. And so I went next day and talked to him about this effect. And I said that the only way I could describe it really accurately was to say that I felt as if I'd fallen in love. And he smiled and said, well, that's exactly what's happened. You've actually met God, as it were, and fallen in love with God in a way that you hadn't through your previous prayers and taking part in the liturgy, although you've obviously experienced God in other ways in the past.
The stress and pressure of modern urban living makes meditation very suitable for people today.
The first of many Christian meditation centres started in 1985 in central London, and it served as an oasis of silence and stillness through its daily meditation times and its weekly groups. Meditation is a way of experience, not of theory. That's how John Main used to describe meditation. It's not about thinking or theorizing, but about entering into the pure experience of being with. There are no difficult techniques to master, and there are no difficult theories that we have to understand. We have to be simple, and we have to have a commitment of faith, to risk being. First of all, be still. Don't forget the importance of simply sitting physically still. And therefore, you'll want to take a moment to get into a comfortable position and sit with your back straight. Then close your eyes lightly. Let the muscles of your face and shoulders relax. And then silently and interiorly begin to say your word, your mantra. Choosing your word is of course important, and it's important to stay with the same word, so that over time the mantra can become deeply rooted in your being and open up within you the continuous prayer of Christ. So stay with the same word. The word I would recommend is the word Maranatha. It's an Aramaic word, which is the language that Jesus spoke. It means, "Come, Lord." St. Paul ends the first letter to the Corinthians with it. It's an ideal Christian mantra. And if you choose that word, say it like this, as 4 syllables, Ma-ra-na-tha. Ma-ra-na-tha. And as you say the word, simply listen to it and give it your attention. Any thoughts that come into the mind as you say the word, when you find that you've got distracted from it, you don't have to worry, just immediately come back to it, gently but faithfully. Say the mantra without haste, without desire. Say it simply, giving it your attention as you say it. And it's in that deep listening with our whole being to that simple saying of the mantra that the journey takes place.
The key to all this is the essential principle of harmony to be found within us. And that principle is the Spirit of Christ. And meditation is simply the way of focusing not just our attention, but our lives on that principle of harmony, of unity, of love.
I felt I was wasting time a little bit. I didn't understand what I was looking for. I experienced a silence that really was wandering, a wandering silence, a distracted silence. The mind started operating. I sat thinking most of the time, and yet the teaching was telling me that I had not to think. I had to say the mantra. It took me a while to understand that that repetition would set me free a little bit.
Then the major thing that I think most people find, and I certainly find, is the distractions that come along in meditating. And to begin with, I used to consider that a problem because I thought I wasn't meditating well. But now I just accept distractions as part and parcel of meditation, and I don't find meditating difficult. It's actually very simple. You just sit there.
Well, of course, there are many distractions. Patience, discipline, to be able to sit and do nothing. You discover that your body has so many peculiarities in terms of itches and adjustments you have to make while you sit. You don't realize if you're moving around. But when you're sitting for 30 minutes, it becomes very difficult.
The most difficult moment is always the moment that you have to sit down and do it. Because there are so many distractions and there are so many temptations, and I have to write this letter and I have to phone to that person and I have to do this and do that. And then to sit down is very often quite difficult.
John Main inherited and developed the rich tradition of the Christian theology of prayer, as described specifically in the Desert Fathers, John Cassian, and the Cloud of Unknowing. For him, Christian meditation is Christian because of the meditator's faith in Christ, because we believe that the risen Christ worships the Father in the Spirit in the depth of the human person. Through the human consciousness of Christ and his power as the Word of God, the meditator expands beyond his or her own ego-centeredness and so shares in the life of the Spirit. The prayer of the Christian is essentially the prayer of Christ.
Jesus was much more a teacher of contemplation than just a giver of moral commandments. When he tells us, for example, to go into our inner room, this is the interiority of contemplation. He tells us to trust. God knows your needs before you ask, he tells us. We don't need to go babbling on, using many words. He tells us that we must learn to be free from anxiety and worry, to be mindful, set your mind on God's kingdom before everything else, and also to live in the present moment. Do not worry about tomorrow, he says. If we put these elements of Jesus' teaching on prayer together, we have a very clear expression of contemplation.
Of course, there are many forms of prayer, all valid and all effective. Think of prayer as a great wheel. Each spoke represents a form of prayer: petition, intercession, sacrament, scripture, devotion. But all the spokes meet in the hub, in the center, which is the mind of Christ, the prayer of Jesus, which is eternally present in the human heart. Opening to this reality is what meditation is about, and it transforms the lives of those who practice it in faith and love.
It's not a place you touch into ordinarily in life, but it's a place where you know that you're one with the divine other, and that your whole focus is there at that moment, at least in time.
I'd very much turned away from my Christian background for quite a long time, and I think I'd got a lot of very deeply held, probably childhood beliefs of what Christianity meant. And having meditated for a number of years and then coming back within the Christian tradition, I've seen the whole of the scriptures and the teachings in a very different light. And I think the experience that meditation offers has certainly helped me find a place within a Christian framework.
For me, the chattiness, sort of Jesus, the bloke, sort of that is walking along and chatting with him about, what a rainy day this is and all that. I just felt that I was inventing a kind of rabbit or something that was sort of walking along, and I never really could fall for that. And interestingly enough, meditation takes all that away, just takes it away. And in a sense, it really does, I think, help one really have faith in a person who has to be there and be himself, and it's not up to me to invent God or invent Jesus. And so it sort of takes away the anxiety to do that.
You're not just looking at the historical Jesus anymore, but the experience of the risen Christ, or the Christ who dwells within each of us, is something that the practice of meditation sort of clears the path to. We're on our way to that experience of union and becoming one with the consciousness of Christ. And meditation is the clearing of that path, those psychological blocks or those things that keep us from knowing ourselves at the deepest level, which is the level of our oneness with Christ.
I think meditation has a wonderful effect on the way it deepens your own faith through a commitment to a discipline and through this inner experience of the love of God. But at the same time, I think it opens up your capacity to interact perhaps at a more meaningful level with people of other religions. And so I think my friends who are Buddhists, who are Hindus, I think they are quite struck by the fact that we Christians too are taking to meditation, because in the Buddhist and in the Hindu traditions, the practice of meditation is very common and is highly recommended to their followers. Whereas in Christianity, the practice of meditation as we teach it has been neglected for many years.
I allow the divine presence in me to take over and to guide me and to live in me. And silence is necessary to allow. I think through silence we allow God to be God.
John Main shows, and the world community illustrates, that this journey from mind to heart leads us out of isolation into community. In making this journey, we discover our true self, and we discover that we belong. We begin to see ourselves and the world in a new light, in a light of unity. We begin to see everything with the mind of Christ. In the first part of this film on the pilgrimage of Christian meditation, we looked at the essential teaching and the tradition behind it. And in this section, we're going to look at how we put that tradition into daily practice, how we integrate it into our daily lives. Many people today experience life as fragmented. There are many divisions in our lives, whether you are a homemaker, whether you are a busy executive, or a student. There are many pulls and demands in different directions, and we feel often that our lives lack a unity. In meditation, we discover a new way of approaching these challenges and demands of modern existence. We discover a new principle of harmony and peace that we build into our life on a daily basis through a simple daily discipline of morning and evening meditation. In the Christian tradition, meditation is also called the prayer of the heart or contemplation. Contemplation means to be in the temple, but it also means to be contemporary, to be in the present moment. And this is perhaps one of the most important things that modern people have to learn, how to be in the present moment, to be in the presence. And essentially, the tradition tells us that there are three elements to this experience of contemplation: silence, stillness, and simplicity. Let's look at each of these in turn. First of all, silence. In order to be silent, we need to find a quiet place and a quiet time. That isn't always easy in daily life, but we have to do the best we can. The ideal times for meditation are early morning, before the day becomes busy, and the early evening, ideally between the end of the day's work and, say, the evening meal or the events of the evening. These times of meditation become great balancing points, great pillars of silence that enrich and stabilize the whole of our daily life. So when you sit to meditate morning and evening, turn the phone off, perhaps let people in the house know that you're meditating, and give yourself as fully as possible to that time as a time of silence and a time of inward attention.
After I brush my teeth and wash my face, I go to a little tiny room in our house and have a half an hour of complete isolation. I'm also a housemaster, so I have 500 students living around my house, and I eat in the dining hall with them every day at lunch. And and have a large family and so forth. So meditation and solitude to some degree go together for me.
And then there's stillness. As soon as we begin to be silent, we begin to discover an inner stillness. But the outer stillness is also a part of meditation. Try and sit still, comfortably, with your back straight. If you sit on a chair, you can put your hands on your lap or on your knees. The basic rule is to sit with your back straight. This will enable you to breathe properly and to be alert and awake. If you're tired after a busy day, you may need to do some stretching or maybe just splash your face with cold water to wake yourself up a little bit. In this time of stillness, you will inevitably feel the distractions of the body. Sometimes there's pain. Try to avoid the pain, obviously. But sometimes it's just little itches or fidgets. Try to avoid those by a little discipline. And you'll find that the discipline of sitting physically still will help you to come to an inner stillness, to that stillness which the psalmist describes as leading us into the knowledge of God. Be still and know that I am God. And this stillness, like the silence, becomes a spiritual element, a spiritual dimension in our daily life.
Meditation is a time of prayer which happens without words, without movement, in solitude, where you are at rest, comfortable, easy, relaxed, and then where you have this opportunity to give your attention to something. And the something is in the silence, around you and within you. It's not a thinking, it's not a praising or a thanking. It's a neutral, simple place of anchor that gently teaches you how to be in the present moment. And it's there that we discover the moment of Christ.
The main reasons why I meditate are really, initially it was to stop the busyness of my life, to really just centre myself and to try and be living in the present. I found I was living too much in the future and even in the past at times. I actually meditate on the train before I go to work and also in the afternoon on the train. So I really try and blend the meditation into my lifestyle. It's my own time which I can spend with God and become closer to Him.
People often look at meditation as a very private thing. You sit down, you still yourself, and you pray alone. But actually it is a very active silence, because through the practice of meditation, you purify your intentions. You get in touch with your source. So when you come out into your normal life, your daily life, you act out of this deep center of energy that you have cultivated or brought into your awareness, your daily awareness. And there is a great desire to reach out to others. You feel more compassionate. You are more aware of what's happening around you.
And the third element of meditation is simplicity, that condition of childlikeness. When we come to meditate, we discover very quickly how busy, how complicated, how distracted our minds are. We're thinking about the past, we're solving problems, we're anticipating the future, we're daydreaming. And all of this activity of the mind is jumbled up together. And at the center of all of this jumble of the mind, there is our self-centeredness, our self-consciousness, our thinking about ourselves. And the essential work of meditation is to take the attention off ourselves. And this new discovery of simplicity in the meditation reveals itself with great delight and freedom in our daily lives.
I'd come across meditation as something that monks did who lived in caves, and it was very complicated and you had to be able to do a headstand for 3 days and so on. So when I came across this small paragraph in a book, in a Christian book, how to meditate, I felt, this is just Christians jumping on the bandwagon. Meditation isn't Christian, and it's not as simple as this. It's far more complicated than this. So anyway, I read the book, and about 3 pages in, I knew that it is this simple, and it is Christian, and it is for men and women, ordinary men and women.
I think that my practice has, in many ways, healed and released a lot of the drivenness around that, and given me a deeper sense of freedom, a felt sense of freedom. I have another teacher that I've worked with recently who talks about letting go of the conditioned self. Delaminating is the word that he uses. Delaminating from the conditioned self, so that you're not caught in the emotions and the reflexes and the scripts that you were conditioned into. And I think over the years what's transformed for me is the sense of deep inner peace and a sense of rest and relaxation in the truth of who I am, not having to be driven in the ways that I was when I was younger.
Saying the mantra is the daily practice. It is the daily pilgrimage. We choose a word that is sacred in our own tradition. I would recommend the word Maranatha. It's the oldest Christian prayer. It's in Aramaic, the language that Jesus spoke. It means, "Come, Lord." St. Paul ends the first letter to the Corinthians with this earliest Christian prayer. So it's a beautiful and ideal Christian mantra. And it becomes our own. It becomes rooted and integrated into our spiritual life through the daily practice. Say the word as 4 syllables, Maranatha. Articulate it clearly in your mind and heart. Don't visualize it, but listen to it. And when the mind wanders into the past, into the future, simply return to the word, giving it your attention gently, faithfully, and simply.
My recommendation to you is, in your daily meditations, to start with a minimum meditation of 20 minutes. Try as soon as you can to put it to 25, and the ideal time is about a half an hour. And take the same time, whether it's 20, 25 or 30 minutes, the same time slot every day. It requires considerable sacrifice to find that time every morning and every evening. Considerable discipline. But it's necessary, because the presence of God in His universe, in His creation, in your heart and my heart, is of such importance that we ignore it at our peril. And if we ignore it, we can never make sense of either ourselves or the universe. And that's why the journey requires seriousness and discipline. And that seriousness and discipline will lead you to a peace and to a joy that no words can possibly describe.
It is natural, but like all human beings, I'm sometimes undisciplined. But then I have to say, and if I don't, you see, the day doesn't go right. Because I find if I start with first thing with meditation, then that informs my whole life from that day. And then when I end with it, it's a beautiful rounding off of today. And I can't really imagine life without meditating.
No, it's not easy. That's the reality. It does require discipline. The basic discipline is to meditate twice a day for 30 minutes and to stay with that every day. That's the basic discipline. And then there's the necessary internal discipline to meditating, which I think is hard for everybody. So I work at it to try to control my thoughts using the mantra, but it's never easy. Sometimes it's easier than others, but it's never easy for me.
When you meditate deeply for a period of time, you become very aware of your own brokenness, your own vulnerability. And I think this makes you, it gives you a tremendous link to the rest of humanity, insofar as that we all realize that we all have these same problems. We all have tremendous vulnerabilities, we have weaknesses, we have strengths, and sometimes we tend to project our anger or our disappointment or whatever onto the other, and we realize that we all have these problems. We're all broken people. And I think when you realize that, you stop judging the other. You become much more compassionate towards the other.
It's amazing. It's just part of our life. It's like bookends. We start the morning with it before we have breakfast, and he goes off to work, and he comes home, and we always meditate before we have supper. It's like brushing teeth. It's part of our life together.
It connects you to reality more and more deeply because it actually has you take the focus off yourself, off your own ego. So when you're meditating, you're not thinking about yourself, you're not thinking your own thoughts, you're not even thinking your own thoughts about God or about the Spirit, or you're just directing your attention to the mantra, which is a practice which takes you past your ego and yourself. And as you begin to go past that, then what you find is you're really more and more connected to other people and to reality as it is, as opposed to your own fantasy world about what reality is.
It's been probably the most transformative practice that I've ever experienced. I was very much into success and striving for success and driving myself very hard. I think with meditation, and people have found that I'm a nicer person now, or maybe my real self has been able to come to the surface and not some mask of somebody else. And I think that's, to me, it's been the most important. It's allowed me to be able to drop the mask of what other people want and be very happy with who I am.
It took me a long time to find my way around, and I think I found the answer, or I hope I'm on the way. I think all this while I've been achieving and searching perhaps for the wrong things, or trying to fight for things for the wrong reasons, maybe to feel an insecurity in me, or maybe trying to please someone else, or trying to do more so that I can feel better about myself. And through meditation now I feel that if I feel that love and that stability and that center within me, then perhaps I don't have to fill up the gaps in me with all these other different things. I guess it helps me to understand what are my key priorities in my life.
I think for me it's been more an awareness of the present moment and of enjoying that present moment. I have tended to be, and I still am in many ways, someone who sort of looks ahead and looks to the future, what's coming up next, and so to be able to really appreciate what's happening in the present moment is becoming a gift, I think, that is becoming more apparent for me in my own life. And certainly I've always enjoyed nature and creation, and I think that awareness has become heightened for me over the last number of years. I take great delight in creation and the beauty of that, and it does. I find myself close to God in those moments of appreciation.
Yeah. The sense of knowing oneself as beloved, knowing oneself as received, as embraced, as held in the love of God. In meditation, we deepen in that awareness constantly, and when one lives into that awareness and begins to live out of that awareness, it's almost like, really like Jesus said, it's like being reborn in the Spirit. So a life lived grounded in that the awareness of love is a very different life than the life that I guess I began, which was a life really grounded in the sense of the culture and its expectations.
I feel that through my meditation practice, I am more loving I can feel more love. It comes more easily, you know. Even to people who are not very lovable, I am able to project or feel the love. So it's coming from a source very deep within me.
I think the most exciting thing for me has been when I'm done meditating, when I come out of it, I feel a real sort of rebirth, like a reborn experience. And for me, that's really cool because I guess in that rebirth, I feel like I'm not distracted anymore by things that can bother me every day. And it's exciting because I come out and I realize, wow, this is what, look at, I have this life that I can do all these things in. I have this opportunity to enjoy these aspects of life that I guess I can miss if I don't take that time to refocus and forget the distractions.
For many people today, the secular age that we live in has created many problems in their relationship to religious tradition. Many people have abandoned or rejected traditional religious institutions. Meditation allows us to discover a spiritual path that can transform and renew our relationship to the great religious traditions. The world community is a Christian community, but it welcomes people from many levels of faith, of many types of search. Some are practicing traditionally in their own Christian churches and denominations. Others are questioning and searching for their Christian identity or their own personal identity. Whenever religion has lost touch with its contemplative roots, it has lost its sense of direction, or it's lost its connection with the contemporary needs of people. By recovering the contemplative dimension at different points in its history, the Church has renewed itself. And this is what we can see happening in many areas of the world and of the Church's life today. Through the discovery of its own tradition of meditation, Christianity can renew itself, both at the liturgical level, how we worship, forms of worship. It can also teach us that the nature of community is at the heart of the Church, not institution, not dogmatism or morality alone, but it's in the spirit of love. After all, meditation is a way of love according to the contemplative traditions, that in the community of love that is created through meditation, we are able to discover again, in a fresh and important way for the modern world, what is the real meaning and the value of religion. Meditation is always a personal journey. I can't meditate for you, you can't meditate for me, but we can meditate together. And it's that which reveals the essential mystery of the community that meditation creates. When a person begins to meditate, they often begin with enthusiasm, but very quickly they find the difficulty of the daily practice. It isn't easy to meditate on your own. And so, very naturally, meditation leads to meditating with others. That's how groups form. And the weekly meditation group is an essential building block of the world community. Meditation groups meet in all sorts of places around the world, in people's homes, in churches, in prisons, in hospitals, in schools, in places of work.
I've been involved in introducing Christian meditation into 2 prisons in the UK, a men's prison and a women's prison. My experience has been extremely rewarding. I feel a great privilege to be bringing this gift into the lives of these men and women. For many, they'll come along to the group out of curiosity, just to relieve stress or to be able to get to sleep at night. But for others, they really see this time as potentially transforming, which of course it can be, to put a life of prayer and meditation in place when in this difficult environment can almost turn into a monastic experience. And I think some individuals really recognise the opportunity.
The weekly group follows a simple format. It meets in the same place, the same time, every week. There is a stability and a fidelity in the very nature of a group. The group begins with a teaching on meditation, emphasizing the simplicity. It then leads into a period of meditation together, 25 or 30 minutes, and then a time after that for sharing, for questions or discussion. So the group is an ideal way both of introducing people for the first time to the way of meditation and also to supporting the daily practice of its members. For some people, the connection between meditation and community is a surprising one. We think of meditation as a solitary practice, and in fact it is an experience of solitude, but not of isolation. In the solitude of meditation, we discover and we embrace our own essential uniqueness. We become the person we are called to be. And in that experience, we discover ourselves in relationship. And so meditation quite naturally leads to a sense of community. Perhaps, at first, a limited community, the people you meditate with every week in your meditation group, or perhaps a sense of community with meditators around the world, both in your own tradition and even outside your own tradition. And ultimately that sense of community becomes universal. Community also is a means of serving the world, so that our own spiritual journey doesn't become too self-centered. We're able to see that the essential dynamic of spiritual growth is a dynamic of love and compassion, of service to others. And also in community, especially in Christian faith, we're able to see that a spiritual form is developing. The body of Christ is taking shape through human lives, through human interaction. The pattern of growth of the world community over the years has shown that from the individual, the group develops, and then as meditation groups multiply, a center comes into being. There are a number of meditation centers around the world. And the purpose of these centers is to support the teaching and the training of those who will, at the right moment in their own lives, share the teaching with others.
The International Office is based at the London Christian Meditation Centre, which is in central London. The International Office serves the community worldwide and is especially useful to the smaller countries who do not have their own national centres, providing them with resources and support for their Christian meditation groups.
Now I'm going to show you a meditation centre with a difference. I share this allotment with a few friends. We're all meditators in different traditions. I call it our contemplative allotment. When we open the gate, it's like entering a different space, where time stands still. Sometimes we work here alone, at other times together. This simple manual work leads us naturally into a shared silence. When we've cleared all the brambles, we plan to build a gazebo, which will be our meditation space.
Out of the personal experience of meditation, we see that community develops and eventually forms into a national community. In many parts of the world, there are national coordinators. Every 3 years, the national coordinators of the world community come together and share their experience, their insights, and their sense of future developments and challenges. In every tradition of meditation, there is the understanding that we need a teacher, a guru. In the Christian tradition, Jesus is that teacher, the teacher within, teaching us through the Spirit and through our own experience. But also, Christ, in a mysterious way, shares that role of teacher with us, his disciples. Meditation needs to be taught, it needs to be passed on. It is most effectively passed on through the humble authority of those who are learning to meditate. In the world community, we try to give some encouragement, some training to those who have reached a point in their own journey where they feel able or they feel the call to pass on this teaching to others. The school in the world community is a program that helps people find their own gift, find their own voice in order to pass on this tradition within the community. There are 3 elements to the school. The first is called the essential teaching. It's a weekend residential experience in which people who've been meditating for some time are able to situate their own experience and journey in meditation into the broader Christian tradition. Second aspect of the school is the roots of Christian mysticism. This is a course that is given in different forms in different places, sometimes as a weekly course, sometimes over a period of a year, in which the participants gain an overall sense of the Christian mystical tradition by examining in some depth the teaching and the influence of individual teachers. The third aspect of the school is the school retreat. This is a more concentrated kind of retreat, a silent retreat, in which a relatively small group of meditators, with the help of 2 or 3 guides, will come to a deeper understanding and insight into the working of the Spirit in their own lives, and often discover in a life-changing way their gift for sharing this with others. As a monastery without walls, the meditation community allows for many expressions of individual vocation. Some meditators, especially those in a time of transition, especially young meditators, can spend a year, an oblate year, as a time of spiritual formation. They grow in the personal discipline of meditation through community, through the service of others, based partly in London at the retreat centre, and also spending some time in a part of the world, part of the community, where they can be of physical service to others.
During my oblate year, I spent 3 months in Mount Isa, Australia. I worked there with the local parish priest, who's also a meditator. I helped him in his work with the Aboriginal community. It proved to be an immensely fruitful time for me. I spent the remainder of that year in the Christian Meditation Retreat Centre in London. Upon completion, I decided to become a member of the Oblate community here at the retreat centre. I now help in the organisation of retreats and help in the formation of those who wish to become Oblates.
This young Oblate community that runs the London Retreat Centre meditates 3 times a day, welcomes visitors and guests from England and around the world, also helps in the work of the International Office in London. In the last year of his life, John Main hosted a seminar at the monastery on art and meditation. And this was the inspiration for what became the John Main Seminar. Every year since his death, the world community has put on a seminar led by a significant leader or figure in the spiritual community, or somebody speaking on the spiritual life from their own experience. The presenters of the seminar have included His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Charles Taylor, the philosopher, Mary McAleese, the President of Ireland, Rowan Williams, the present Archbishop of Canterbury. And through these significant teachers and figures in their own field, the world community is able to enter into dialogue with many aspects of the modern world. Every year, the world community holds an international meditation retreat at the monastery of Monte Oliveto in Italy. This is the mother house of my own monastic family. It's a beautiful experience for meditators from around the world to come together in a place of prayer, a place of tradition, and to discover that in deepening their own spiritual journey, they are also growing into community. One of John Mayne's great insights, I think, for the modern world is that meditation, this experience of prayer, this experience of interiority, leads and grows into community. And here at the monastery, we're able to understand something of the nature of this experience in the light of the great monastic tradition. We can see here Benedict's wisdom in understanding the spiritual journey as a harmony of the individual, coming together in body, mind, and spirit, understanding that the spiritual life is a balance between prayer, work, and study. And in these ways we come to understand that our own spiritual journey is not an isolated or lonely one, but it is an experience of expansion into the body of Christ. Since the first publication of John Mayne's teaching on meditation, the Gethsemane Talks in 1976, the community has continued to develop its teaching role through books, tapes, CDs, and the work of Media, the publishing arm of the world community, now based in Singapore. The internet has transformed modern consciousness. We're able to be in touch with vast amounts of information and with many parts of the world simultaneously. There are good and bad uses of the internet. A good use of the internet is to create what one might call a web of silence, a connection between people at a deep spiritual level, enabling them to share their differences without their differences becoming divisions, to experience the common ground that we find in the practice of meditation. But the internet can also be very important as part of people's spiritual search. It brings people together, it enables them to make contact, to form groups, and to be in touch with others who are on the same pilgrimage. The World Community website has now spawned different sites reflecting particular aspects of the life of the community and the teaching of meditation to particular groups. There's a website for those interested in teaching meditation to children. There's another website for young people. There's a website for oblates, Benedictine oblates of the world community. There's a website for those who are in recovery in the 11th Step program. The community also produces a newsletter 4 times a year, and this is sent out to individuals and to groups around the world, together with a spiritual teaching and news about the community worldwide, and of course the national and local communities as well. One of the most useful and popular publications is a quarterly CD, the Meditatio CD, which is sent to every meditation group around the world 4 times a year. The world community is very much a decentralized organization, but of course it does need some financial support, and this is provided largely through the Friends program. The Friends program is a way by which individuals and groups can contribute according to their own resources to the work of the community, especially to our work in trying to bring meditation to developing countries and those parts of the world that need financial and material help. The symbol of the world community is an ancient Christian, indeed an ancient religious symbol, of 2 birds sitting on the edge of a cup or a chalice, one representing the contemplative life and the other the active life. And the world community expresses, like any true contemplative organization or contemplative community, this balance between contemplation and action. No genuine contemplative life can exist without expressing itself in terms of justice, peace, and compassion. The fruits of meditation are really the fruits of the Spirit. St. Paul describes these as love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, fidelity, gentleness, and self-control. And we find these fruits of meditation, the fruits of the Spirit, both at an individual, personal level and in the life of a community. The meeting of world religions in a spirit of friendship and collaboration for the good of the world is one of the most important developments in modern times. Meditation is crucial to this deepening of interreligious friendship and dialogue. We find meditation at the heart of every one of the great religious traditions. And by entering into that heart of our own tradition, the contemplative core of our own spiritual path, we find the common ground of humanity. By sharing and experiencing this common ground, we find ourselves empowered to work together in very real and practical ways for the well-being of the world and for the relief of the poor, the relief of human suffering, and the promotion of peace and justice. In 1994, the Dalai Lama led the John Main Seminar, which became a milestone in the history of interreligious dialogue, when he spent several days commenting from his Buddhist perspective upon the teachings of Jesus in the Gospel. One of the fruits of the Good Heart Seminar was the Way of Peace. This began as a 3-year program with the Dalai Lama, incorporating the elements of pilgrimage to each other's sacred sites, of retreat together, and also of sharing in the work of bringing healing and reconciliation to those parts of the world which were troubled by violence or conflict. In the year 2000, the Dalai Lama led other presenters of the John Main Seminar in an important initiative in Belfast in Northern Ireland.
I'm excited to meet someone who has seen such suffering, who has such a deep longing for his country from which he is separated, and his people from whom he is separated, and just to hear how he has coped with the years of exile. He has much to teach us about suffering, and we'll listen on to him. I'm excited.
We walk in God's presence. As God said to Abraham, walk in my presence and be perfect. We'll walk together in God's presence today and hopefully make a little bit of progress towards the perfection of our humanity that we all long for. Catholic, Protestant.
Oh, that's good, that's good.
That's it.
After the 3-year process, the Way of Peace continued as a way of illustrating the contribution of contemplation, contemplative life, and of interreligious dialogue to the healing of the divisions within the human family. Our dialogue with the Muslim world began with an important seminar in York University, which brought together about 200 Christians and Muslims, young people and scholars, to reflect upon the common ground of their contemplative traditions. In Sarajevo, we worked to try to bring reconciliation between the Christian and Muslim communities. And in New York University, Muslim and Christian students were able to come together in that same spirit of dialogue and friendship grounded in the practice of meditation. In many ways, in the developed world, meditation is seen to be restricted to the middle classes. But meditation is a way of poverty of spirit, as Jesus describes it. And therefore it is especially relevant to those people who are materially poor. And the work of our community has brought us into contact with the poor in the favelas of Brazil, in the villages of Indonesia or India. In Haiti, I was amazed to see the response in this poorest of all countries in the Western Hemisphere of the poor to meditation. There is a special significance in teaching meditation in the developing world. The sense of self, the true self, the sense of real human dignity that arises through the practice of meditation has a powerful and important contribution to make to social justice and to change in our world. Perhaps it is in seeing the natural and beautiful response of children to meditation that we can all understand better how simple and natural meditation is. Children can meditate, and they like to meditate, and their response teaches us something very important about the meaning of our own spiritual journey. The teaching of meditation to children opens our eyes both to the real meaning of meditation, a simple and natural way of spiritual growth and development, of bringing our humanity into wholeness and harmony. But it also gives us an insight into how we can allow our children to make a better world. Our hope for the environment, our hope for better standards of living, quality of life, our hope for more truly humane values, for the moderation that we need in order to protect our ecology. These are essential intuitive values that have to grow in us from childhood on. And so the teaching of meditation to children is a real contribution to the healing of our wounded world. Students and young adults today face enormous challenges. Life is full of unpredictable situations, many difficult choices. Meditation can offer them a life-giving simplicity and a refreshing way of finding clarity in these confusing situations. At the John Main Center for Meditation and Interreligious Dialogue at Georgetown University, the center offers daily meditation twice a day and also a support and encouragement to learn meditation in these formative years.
To me, it's really a way to kind of take yourself away from the stresses that especially students can so often get wrapped up in. And especially here at Georgetown, there are so many students that are really, really motivated and focused, and you have to like study and work hard to get to where we are. And it kind of helps you to find a simpler meaning in life and a deeper meaning in life, even if it is just for that 30 minutes and then you go back to the student life. It helps you to be more centered. And as midterms came, because we're doing midterms right now, I found that it really helped me to not to be less focused, but to be more calm and tranquil about it. And it's helping me, like, even with my studies. So
first, you're sort of very, very focused on getting the actual practice down right. You're sort of thinking more about what you're supposed to do rather than what you're trying to get out of it. And so the first few, I think that it's very difficult to figure out what you're really trying to get at from the first few meditations. You're so worried about, am I sitting upright? Am I thinking about the mantra too much? But then I think once you get past that period, then you can sort of reflect more on how you've progressed.
One of the great spiritual movements of modern times is the 12-step program, the way of dealing with addiction, one of the great problems of the modern world. The 11th step is to find God through prayer and meditation.
Meditation in the context of the 11th step, for me, means something practical, something experiential. Before meditation, my concept of a higher power and contact with a higher power was largely something intellectual. Now it's something that I have a method to practice and a way to feel. So progressively, it's become something more and more of the heart and less of the head. I discovered meditation over 15 years ago. My mind was very scattered and I realized I needed a tool, and subsequently I set up a group in Geneva. That was about 15 years ago.
At a certain stage in this program of recovery, many people discover in meditation a way of living that 11th step at the deepest and fullest level.
The link between Christian meditation and the recovery community has been the secret to the success of the group in Geneva.
One of the ways in which Christianity is being renewed and indeed even rediscovered in our own time is to see it as a way of healing. The early Christians saw Jesus as the divine physician, the Eucharist as the medicine of immortality. The language of the early church was much more about healing than of judgment or moral condemnation. And it's in the contemplative renewal of the church that we rediscover the true meaning of health, of healing, the therapy of prayer. This finds expression in our community in the way in which many meditators bring the gift of contemplative prayer to those who are sick or to those who are dying.
That capacity, that availability of an ocean of oneness and peace, the fact that that is immediately available to all of us if we stop spinning our wheels long enough just to recognize it, that has been very, very real.
Meditation prepares us for death, because every time we meditate, we are dying. We are experiencing what death is. It's not easy. It's a loss. It's a separation. And yet at the same time, it's teaching us that we don't need to fear it, because it isn't the end. It isn't extinction. It isn't obliteration. It is death. But it is a passage. It is a part of the journey. In some hospitals, meditators run programs introducing meditation to the patients and to the carers. There are not many people in the world today who don't recognize that something has gone wrong with the way we do business and with our attitude to work. Developing a right attitude to work and right ways of approaching profit, commercial development, the use of the environment, these are intuitive responses that have to grow from an inner experience of what is good, the goodness of human nature. These are not values that can only be imposed by law or by force from the outside. They have to grow from personal self-awareness upon the inner life of those who do the work upon which the world depends.
My wife, Patricia, who died about a year ago, we had a chance to talk about our life and our children. She taught me that what matters most was that we should be happy and not successful. And she says, well, for our children, what we would hope is that they will be happy, not necessarily successful. In other words, success may or may not matter for happiness. But even if it mattered, it is only one of the ingredients for happiness.
By experiencing the community that meditation creates, we are able to understand the meaning of meditation for the world we're living in today. We live in a world of crisis. In so many areas of the world, in many areas of our lives, we discover that we are in crisis. The word for crisis means judgment in Greek. The Chinese character for crisis means both opportunity but also danger. In discovering meditation, the great common human wisdom of this path of interiority, this path of silence, stillness and simplicity, we discover a way of approaching that crisis to make it a time of growth, a time of evolution for human consciousness. In Christian faith, we believe that those who are united to Christ experience a new creation. We see the world in a new way. The eyes of the heart are opened. Meditation is essential to this transformation of human consciousness.
The mystery of love is that we become what we delight to gaze upon. And so when we have opened our hearts to the light, we become light. The mystery of love is that we become